Right, it's time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world. Clément Bonnereau joins me again in the studio. Clément, we start with the top story today, Donald Trump and that wall on the border with Mexico.
That's right. It was one of his key promises during the presidential campaign, and he's now delivering on that promise. He signed an executive order on Wednesday for a, quote, impassable physical barrier between Mexico and the US. You can see the actual signing here. Now, as Metro reminds us, the wall is not the only element of the Fortress America that Trump is trying to build. The new president also signed orders to ban or at least vet migrants from 7 Middle Eastern and African nations, including Iraq and Syria.
Right, now all sorts of figures have been flying in about how much this wall could possibly cost. What do you know about that?
Well, estimates vary hugely between roughly 15 and 25 billion euros. In comparison, the existing border fence, which covers only about 1,000 kilometres along the border, cost 2.2 billion euros.
Now, it's not just about a wall, though, is it? There are all sorts of other things that will need to be considered with building this wall. How easy is it going to be?
Well, the Washington Post lists 5 challenges that Trump may face trying to build that wall. Among them, the American newspaper points out that some of the land along the border, particularly in Texas, is actually privately owned. And as the Washington Post puts it, resuming barrier construction on private lands will likely invite more lawsuits and logistical challenges.
So once those logistical challenges are out of the way, of course, we need to consider the communities who are living on both sides of that wall.
Well, as the Financial Times reports this morning, local reactions are actually mixed. Residents in border states have expressed concern over the potentially negative impact of building a wall on regional economies, while at the same time expressing their support for enhanced security along the border. Now, quite ironically, The Guardian writes that Mexican construction companies are likely to be the biggest winners from the construction of the border wall. The British newspaper writes that it will take up to 40,000 people to build it, and most of the workforce will actually come from Mexico and not the US.
All right, and just one last question. What is the American press saying about the effectiveness of this wall?
Well, the Los Angeles Times this morning is very critical of the wall in its editorial. The newspaper writes that there is basically no point in building it. Illegal immigration from Mexico has actually dropped in recent years. And the Los Angeles Times also adds that looking at the wider picture, the economic costs vastly outweigh the benefits in terms of security.
Clément, just talk us through what Mexico are saying about whether they will pay for this wall, as Trump has suggested.
Well, Trump keeps saying that Mexico will pay for the wall, but Mexicans disagree. Just look at this headline in the newspaper Excelsior. Mexico offers and demands respect. Peña Nieto responds to Trump. And his response is actually a resounding no. Mexico will not pay for the wall.
All right, President Peña Nieto and Trump are going to be meeting in Washington next week. It's looking set to be a pretty uncomfortable meeting.
Absolutely. Well, Mexicans see Trump's announcement as a provocation. Mexican paper La Jornada reports that many in Mexico, including MPs, business leaders and cabinet ministers, are actually calling for that meeting to be cancelled. Now, is Peña Nieto going to listen to them? That remains to be seen.
Right, Trump's also scheduled to meet another leader, Theresa May, on Friday.
That's right, and the pressure is high for Theresa May. She's hoping to push forward a trade deal between the US and China, but as the Eye notes, negotiations could be tricky. Trump has said he also wanted to revive the special alliance, but obviously he wants to put America first. Now, if you take a look at this cartoon in the Daily Telegraph, you see here a man telling this other guy in a suit, I've sold Hadrian's Wall to Donald Trump. This is indeed a reminder that a trade deal with the US may not actually be in Britain's best interest.
All right, Clément, and if we can end on a lighter note from China, which will be celebrating the Lunar New Year.
That's right. The story is in the South China Morning Post, and it's both funny and a little bit tragic at the same time. Basically, a man who was hoping to cycle home for Chinese New Year realised 30 years into his trip that he'd been travelling in the wrong direction. But don't worry, the story actually ends well. When they found out about it, the police paid for a train ticket to get him home in Qiqihar in northeastern China.
And how long did that take to get home?
Probably a couple of hours at least.
All right, Clément Bonnereau, thank you very much for the roundup there.